Hello, I'm Ashley Jensen. Welcome to Scotland Inspired, a series that explores the arts family tree of Scotland by finding who and what have helped shape some of the country's most creative minds. Margaret Bennett is acknowledged as one of the major figures of the modern Scottish revival in folklore studies and a singer of great versatility and sensitivity. She has written several award-winning books and recorded CDs with a range of musicians. In this programme, she considers the song collectors Hamish Henderson, Marjorie Kennedy Fraser and Margaret Fay Shaw, and the musician, her son, the late Martyn Bennett.
Hamish Henderson, the great collector, poet, friend. I heard of him when I was 12 because my mother bought a record, a 12-inch album that came out, and she told me about Hamish Henderson, that he was collecting songs, and many people had little collections of songs. My mother used to keep a little black book of songs, and her own grandfather had been collected or recorded by Marjorie Kennedy Fraser. And in my childhood, somebody from the School of Scottish Studies had come to our house and recorded my mother. But going through to Edinburgh to meet Hamish Henderson was very special. I didn't think that he would remember that occasion when it was a good many years later I was singing at a concert in Glasgow, actually. It used to be the McClellan Galleries, and it was in memory of, or to honour Paul Robeson. And he was at that, and I was astonished that he could remember precisely who I was, where I was from, and the fact that they had a recording of my mother. He was remarkable. So very shyly I said, I wonder, would it be possible to find out if a recording of my mother's was accessible? He said to me, what was her name? And he had that on that machine in, seemed to me like seconds. And I remember feeling a great warmth as he played the recording of my mother singing in Portree in 1953. I think probably one of the areas of life and of Scottish society, if you be that formal about it, that Hamish succeeded in drawing attention was the travellers. They were in some ways, and in fact many ways, bypassed, sidetracked. In fact, they don't appear, their songs don't appear in many of the older and prestigious collections. But Hamish went out, and he didn't just go among them, he sometimes lived among them, and recognised that they had a well of tradition that was a depth that might never be plumbed, and that they had versions of old songs that had really remained incredibly intact in their repertoire, because they lived sort of together and kept that alive, literally by a fireside, a campfire for them. And when he began to bring some of them to the major performance spaces, for example in 1951 when he ran the People's Festival Ceilidh, in some senses that began as a statement that there's a very profound value in the art of ordinary people.
Our next candidate is a man who knows the roads of Scotland very well, Jimmy Macbeth.
Oh, I am a weaver, and they call me Jiggy Broon. I in Sways a weaver, and I lived in Monksville Toon. No, I've joined the soldiers, the birth I'm gonna war. to join the Healing Regiment, the Gullenford it was. The very first day on parade was a lot of raw recruits. When the sergeant, he got on to me for looking at my boots. He tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Lord, you'll come out war, for I think you're gone to mock a mess of the Gullenford it was. You may talk about your first Royal Scottish Fusiliers."
This is Scottish tradition, the very core of Scottish tradition. So what sort of influence did he have? Well, suddenly it was noticed in Edinburgh as possibly one of the best events of the festival. And there was no looking back, because there was the second People's Festival, Cayley. There were folk clubs springing up everywhere. There was people in many places who were actually beginning to sing some of these songs. So it's like a huge big jigsaw puzzle of interlocking pieces, this great word of collection and handing on tradition, each of us building on the last one and leaning on the next one. Marjorie Kennedy Fraser was born in Perth into a family of musicians and singers. Her father was an opera singer. In fact, all the family followed music. Now, this is sort of early 1900s, 1905, say. She had heard wax cylinder recordings made by Cecil Sharp, so she knew this machine existed. But when, I believe it was in Edinburgh, she heard a song, a Gaelic song from the Hebrides. She had never heard anything like this. Of course, it's nothing like opera. And she was so drawn, she decided she would go to the Hebrides and record these songs. So she and her daughter, Patufa, went to the islands, and she recorded, a large number, because there are now 4 volumes of her songs. When the first volume came out, a young woman in America by the name of Margaret Shaw heard them in Philadelphia, and she was a concert pianist, and she was absolutely struck. Now, she didn't hear the wax cylinders, she heard the concert version, and she was so taken, she wanted to hear the original singers. So she moved to Uist and stayed with these 2 sisters in South Uist.
Mary was the laundress, and Peggy was the whole show in the kitchen of milking the cow and doing every possible thing for a pittance. They're first cousins, and they lived in the kitchen. But of course, in no time, I always went around and went in the kitchen to be with Peggy and Angus McCush, and that's where I got some of my songs, best songs. I heard Mary sing, "Oh, Mahari here and Tala." I said, "That's a lovely song. Will you teach it to me?" "Yes," she said, "Have you come to see me?" I said, "Yes, I'll come as soon tomorrow if I can." There's something about South Uist that attracted me then and never left me.
Now, that collection, which she didn't publish till about in the early 50s, that stands as possibly one of the finest collections of traditional Gaelic song that we have, with fantastic notation and the notes that go with it. And she weaves in the fabric of life. For example, if a song is a walking song, or you'll get recipes for dye, or, and this is the plant that you used for that. And these little things are in that book as well. And what a gift. People are still aspiring to produce work of that standard. So to think that Marjorie Kennedy Fraser, get back to her, was the one who inspired her, isn't that a gift in itself? And for that alone, I know a bit more, I would thank her. I think actually we should be very, very glad that she did our recordings. Martyn was an only child, and so when we sang lots, he used to come out collecting with me. I didn't actually notice how completely attentive he was. He had an incredible memory for sound and the surrounding components of senses, but that memory for music and reproducing it. I didn't even notice when he was singing in harmony at the age of 2. He had incredible power of concentration. He used to say, "No, listen, just listen." And would you believe that he taught me to listen better, to listen to what's going on in a piece of music? to hear the many, many layers of what's going on in a piece of music. And also to listen to what even doesn't seem like a great tune, but it's got words. You listen to text as well. He had a great sense of performance. We worked on the album Glen Lyon. I had no idea what he was going to do with this. It was basically, you just have to trust. I'm not asking for your ideas, Mum, just asking for your songs. He often made me sing things more than once. Memorably, Glen Lyon, which is the song that gives its name to the album. And I'd sung that, it seemed to me, forever. I can hardly remember learning it. So he heard it all his life. But my mother, just before I did the recording, she said, "Now, Margaret, make sure you get that second verse right. In fact, I'm going to write the words the way I taught you, because you keep changing one of those words. And I'm going to write the words for you, and don't take your eye off this paper and do it that way," said my mother. Gosh, I thought, I'm getting instructions from all directions. So I had put the paper on the stand, and I began to sing, and he stopped me after a line, "Start again." This happened about 3 or 4 times, and he was in behind this wee glass screen, where the mixing desk was, and I there in a studio and a microphone. And without any further ado, he was very agile, and he took about 4 steps, and he swept over to the music stand, took the paper and tore it up. "Now," he said, "sing. I can hear your eyes on that paper. Sing. I don't want to hear your eyes. I want to hear your voice." And he was absolutely right. When somebody's eyes are drawn onto a paper, they're reading, even if they know the thing off by heart. And it's like saying, sing from your heart. If you like, he learned my mother's lesson. You get right inside the song, and then you can give it your all. He had that. And he was quite a formidable performer himself. He gave everything. And I do come across quite a lot of young people usually, and now people in their 30s even, and some in their 40s, who say that Martyn was such a huge influence on them in their music, in their own compositions, or in their playing, or even in their life, which is quite amazing that one young person should leave that behind.
In the next programme, we'll hear from writer and broadcaster Hardeep Singh Kohli. The researcher for Scotland Inspired is James Black. The producer is Robert Noakes, and the series was conceived and developed by Brian Beattie. Scotland Inspired is a Neon production for BBC Radio Scotland.